Change may be scary, but we're here to help people like you move forward. My name is Amy Ballantyne. Welcome to Power to the People Pleasers. I'm so excited to have my guest Cindy here. Welcome, Cindy.
Thank you. What a gas to be here. Thank you.
Well, I am really excited for this conversation for many reasons, but I actually just had a coaching conversation with someone who is, you know, getting ready to move to their next level. So I feel like this is a very appropriate time to be having this conversation with you. But before we jump into this topic of change being scary and moving to the next level, I would love to know, have you ever been a people pleaser? And if so, how did that show up in your life?
Oh, such a good question. You know, I have. I sit here today, after all of my career and in this next phase of my career, and I like to think that maybe I wasn't as much of a people pleaser,
Yeah.
but the reality is I was.
Mhm.
And it showed up in a number of different ways, but I think one of the most poignant ways for me was after I started my company.
Mm.
Um, and I started to hire employees. It was very difficult for me to be their boss and lead them and not be thinking about anything that I said would have an implication of, oh, do they still like me? Are they going to be mad at me? Is this going to be okay with them? And it took me a while, honestly, to grow into the role of a leader, to recognize that I was in charge of the company, which meant that I was also in charge of them, their well-being, that they were in the best position to do their jobs. All those kinds of things, if I wanted to be a good leader, meant that I was thinking in terms of them, in terms of the company.
Mm.
And once I realized that that was the place I was coming from, it was less about pleasing them and more about understanding what the context was that we were working within, why we were doing what we were trying to do. And then it was really up to them,
Mm.
whether or not they stepped up or not. So it was a big lesson for me.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that very much, and I know that many of our listeners will resonate with this experience for sure. I have met many entrepreneurs who are moving through that process of, you know, will people like me? And I really value you being honest about that because it is a real feeling that many people go through when they're transitioning into another role, right?
Sure,
Um, so
sure.
thank you.
Yeah, and it's my pleasure. It's a little, it's hard to put it out there and be, honest, but I think it's the only way we can have a great conversation,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah, yeah. And I really think that you're setting a really beautiful tone for our conversation today because we're talking about change. We're talking about how it may be scary and how sometimes being honest, being vulnerable can
Yeah.
help us move through these feelings that we're having. So, before we jump into that, though, I want
Yeah.
to share your bio because you are so phenomenal, and I want everyone listening
Thank
to
you.
know how awesome you are. So, after more than 20 years as the founder and CEO of a business she built into a successful nationwide company, Cindy chose to sell her business and move on to the next phase of her life. And the next phase ended up transitioning herself from a business leader wearing suits and high heels, wearing denim and boots in rural Colorado. And not only did Cindy make this major life change, but she also wrote a book called Finding Your Next, which she tells the story of becoming a rancher and the lessons learned along the way, and the others can use as they discover their own next. So, uh, Cindy, truly excited to have you here.
Thank you.
Wow. Wow.
Oh,
So,
sweet.
can you share, please, a little bit about your story of the transition? Because I think that it will help others uh, hear that they're not alone in this
Right.
change, maybe scary situation. So walk us through what happened for you.
So, I was in business. I started a company, founded a company, ran a company, was the CEO of the company, hired an amazing team, built the company. Gotta tell you, it was one of the greatest experiences of my life. And even though I loved it and it was so fulfilling and so satisfying, I loved the people I worked with. I loved my clients. I loved what we did. After 20 some odd years, I got to tell you, I woke up one morning, sort of over a long period of mornings,
Mhm.
and really recognized that I needed to move on. The company was at a place where I had done what I could do, wanted to do. I'd met my goals. And it was okay and really scary to think about what was going to be next. And after a lot of thinking it through, um, came to the decision to move on and decided to sell the company as a mechanism to do that, to set the company up for its future while also setting me up for mine.
Mm.
And then I did it. Again, a great experience, I gotta say. One of the most exciting times of my life was selling the company.
Yeah.
But then I came out on the other side, right? And I'm like, oh, great. This is awesome. Now what?
No.
Now what? And I was like in my later 50s, sort of
Mhm.
over the hump of mid 50s. And I'm like, I'm not done. But you kind of, when you do something like that, you're given by everyone else a couple of assumption choices
Mm.
where they assume one, you're either going to go off and start another company because,
Mhm.
oh my gosh, you just can't sit still and you've got to be able to have something to do, right? And you love this, so you should probably do it again. Or two, oh, I guess you're just going to retire. That's it. Those were my choices that were
Mhm.
bestowed upon me. And I didn't really appreciate either of them. I kind of glommed onto retirement because I had no idea what I was going to do. But when I would talk about it, I would put air quotes around it. And people would say, so what are you doing? And I would put the air quotes around, I guess I'm retiring. And
Right.
so it really sent a message that, not really, hint, hint, wink, wink, but what else am I going to do? So the idea of stepping into a completely different lifestyle was at the moment of selling the company, not front and center for me. I gotta
Mm.
say, it
Wow.
took me a while. It took
Mhm.
me, as one person on my board said to me, and it was really good advice. He said, say no to everything for about 6 months. So I lasted about 3. And I started to do things, started to volunteer, started to, you do stuff, you fill your life.
Yeah. Yeah.
And through that process of about a year, I realized I want to do something different. I want to do something that I've never done before. Because as an entrepreneur, I think one of the benchmarks of entrepreneurs, certainly of my life as an entrepreneur, is I realized I just like to make shit up. I
Mhm.
do. I just like to create and figure something new out. That's the jazz.
Mhm.
So the idea of sort of throwing it all up in the air and looking at your life and change, what I came to realize during this process of my own change is there's really 3 areas you can make a change. It's your lifestyle, your work, and your relationship.
Mhm.
Right? So I was now divorced happily. I mean, we're both
Mhm.
happily divorced, got
Yeah.
along great, wonderful transition of a relationship. I
Good.
was, by the time, changing now into moving into another relationship, big
Mhm.
change.
Mhm.
Work, that's pretty self explanatory, not running a company, not in charge of stuff, not responsible for a bunch of other
Yeah.
people. And why not change my lifestyle all at the same time and just throw
But
it up in the air, right? If I had just gotten my hair cut too, it would have been everything. But I chose to keep my hair. And that's when I really decided why not look for something totally different. And it was an old dream of mine to move to this this area of Colorado, which is a rural section of Colorado in the Rocky Mountains, that is so stunningly gorgeous.
Mm.
And I'd come here when I was 19, fell in love with the
Mm.
place, and sort of made like a pinky swear to myself that one day I'll go back, one day I'll make a life there. And then life got sort of going and
Mm.
it went away. And here I was at this magnificent point of my life. And lo and behold, the dream came back.
Wow.
So I followed it.
Wow. I just got like head to toe goosebumps hearing this. Wow. You know, I am in such a state of excitement as we dig into this because I literally just had this conversation with someone who is wrestling with potentially moving on from career, wrestling with what could that look like. And there was a comment about, well, I couldn't possibly fantasize about creating something that doesn't exist. And everything in my being was like, but why
But
not? So, can you
why?
talk about this? Talk about
Yeah.
this in answer
Yeah. You
to this.
know, let's focus. Let me focus just a little bit around it. Okay.
Mhm,
Why do
mhm,
we feel that way?
mhm.
Because it's scary,
Yeah.
right? Because change is scary. It's scary enough to step into something that you already know,
Mhm.
because it's still a change. And there's still going to be different surrounding all aspects of it, even though you've got some information. But when it's about really exploring something totally new and different, oh my goodness, who wouldn't be scared?
Yeah.
It's like standing on the edge of the big open, like cavern, and it's really dark down there and you can't see what you're going to jump into. And somebody's saying, go jump, it'll be okay. And every bone in our body, every cell in our body is saying, whoa, whoa, let's step back here, because we naturally protect ourselves by having kind of a fear of the unknown.
Mhm.
And unfortunately, what happens when we struggle with the fear of the unknown, or we're confronted with it, is that oftentimes we let it stop us right then and there,
Yeah.
because we don't know, and it's scary, and I'm not jumping down there.
Mhm.
Instead, what your client might appreciate knowing is that that natural kind of protection that we go through as humans is actually a way to tell us that we don't have enough information yet. That's where the fear is coming. That
Yeah.
yes, we don't know. Okay. Do you really want to explore it? Then there's a period of exploration, possibly some research, some questioning, some gathering of information that is required in order to fill in the blanks and answer all of your questions, so that the unknown becomes less scary, because now we know more.
Yes. Because there's
So
known. Yeah.
now all of a sudden, that big cavern that was so dark now has a bridge.
Mhm.
Oh, I see a way across. And not only that, I see there's a bunch of really green pastures over there, and meadows, and flowers, and mountains, and sunshine, or somebody I like over there. I'm willing
Mhm.
to cross the bridge because I have enough information
Mhm.
to get to the other side. Now, that's not the end of the process, but that is one of the ways to change our perspective on how the fear of the unknown stops us and blocks us from moving ahead, as opposed to being something that is information to us to tell us what we need to do on the next step to move forward.
Mm. Wow. That was incredible. And I think you're absolutely right that fear is describing what information we don't have yet. So I'm curious, you mentioned that you had this idea back when you were in your
19.
teens,
Right.
19. Like,
Yeah.
so was there a process that you went through to like find this connection again? Did it
Well,
just magically pop in your head? Like, tell me about that.
I think if we're open to possibilities,
Mm,
okay, key. So, what happens when we make a decision that we're even thinking about change? Change could be a possibility. What happens is we kind of, if you visualize it, we lift our heads up, right? When we're doing what we're doing, we're kind of got our heads down, focusing on what we're doing. We don't see that door opening or that
mhm,
possibility over there because we're focused on our life, our jobs, our families, our recreation, what's in front of us. Boom. And our
mhm,
head's kind of down. When you sort of go, oh, I think I might be interested in a change, something phenomenal happens where we lift up and our peripheral vision, it's a hard word for me to say, starts to open up. And we start to notice things that we haven't seen before, right?
mhm,
We just haven't noticed. So when you do that and you're open to possibilities, then things like old dreams, old experiences, new opportunities, someone who might be looking for, someone just like you who you never even knew existed before, now you see them. So
yeah,
my dream from when I was 19, and it was very fantastical, right?
mhm,
And it was like, oh, someday, and I didn't know what that meant, right?
mhm,
Now when it came back to me, now it came back in the form of, you know, I think I want to change like the whole thing. And if I
mhm,
were going to do that, what comes into my mind? Oh gosh, if I close my eyes and just dream a little bit, wouldn't it be cool to live on some land that's wide open
mhm.
with like a magnificent view of mountains in front of me where I could wake up to that every day and kind of create a new way to live? That was it, except for I embellished a little bit and then thought, ooh, it'd be cool to have one of those old fashioned rocking chairs where I sat
Ah,
and like with a really big hat where you just sit there and you lean back and you sort of take it all in. Not
yeah.
quite sure why I needed a big hat for that, but that's the visual that sort of came. And like I would kind of go rocking back and forth thinking of it.
Mhm,
Once I got that, then it was like, well, geez, that sounds lovely. Where could I find that?
mhm.
Then opportunities started to present themselves. Then I started to notice, boy, I know a realtor who's in that same area, who's the mother of one of my past employees. Maybe I'll give her a call and maybe talk to her about it and see, is there like any sense of reality? Start to ask the questions, start to gather the information,
Yeah.
start to fill in the blanks so that the fear doesn't block me from moving forward, but instead I'm moving myself forward based on a recognition that I had a lot more questions than I had answers.
Yes. Yes. And I love the underlying, you know, trust your trust the images that come into your mind when you ask the questions. Trust who knows why you needed the big hat, but I love that you were imagining in such vivid detail to help, I think, open the doors to the different possibilities that were to come forward into your life. So I'd love to know, okay, so if change is scary, we've talked about, managing the fear voice by asking the questions and taking the steps and walking in that direction. What other blockers do you know and would you identify as getting in the way for people who are kind of in this process?
Great question. I wish there weren't anymore, but as I went through the process, I realized that you can ask all the questions and gather the information, but then you're still moving towards action, right?
Mhm.
So, what stops us and blocks us from taking action on what we've learned? And even when we feel like, okay, I've learned enough, I think I want to take the next step forward and explore this further. Well, it's another big fear, and that's the fear of failure. Oh gosh, what if? What if I do it? What if I do it? What if I go and get this land, right? Because I found a beautiful piece of land and I'm standing on the land and I'm bathing in the magnificence of the view and the openness, everything I wanted. And then, boom, I get hit
Fear.
with the fear of failure. And all that starts flooding my brain and all my senses, right? Is what if I move here? What if I do this? And my family gets mad at me. My friends, I'll never see my friends again. The place I picked is a 6 hour drive from where I was living. So Colorado's a pretty big state,
Yeah.
right? And, it's not like when you're on the East Coast, you drive through in 6 hours, 7 states. In
Yeah.
Colorado, you get from the top to the bottom, right?
Yeah.
So I was like, what if they don't come? I'm going to be all alone there. I don't know anybody. What if I don't know what I'm doing and I make a massive mess of the situation? What if? What if? What if? And what if questions always tend to be on the negative, don't
Mhm.
they? Whoever asks themselves, what if it's a wild success? What
Isn't
if
that a better question to ask?
who does that? So we know that what if questions, probably should be asking them from the possibility. It is the opposite. And I'm a big fan of opposites of negative and look at the positive. But it is an indication that we're kind of swimming in on one side
Mm.
of that fear of failure. So I play a game. My mother taught me this game. Can't take credit for this game.
Yeah.
And it's the what if game, right? What could go wrong? And you start working. What's your biggest fear of how you're going to mess it up? It could go wrong. And so it's like, what if I spend all this money and I do it and I hate it? Well, I guess I could sell it and then try something else. Okay, well, that wouldn't be the end of the world. Well, what if you do it, you set it up okay, but then nobody comes? What if? No, that's not kind of real because if I know I want people to come, then I think I'll set it up in a way that they'd want to come because that's who I am. That's I'm going to capitalize on who I am, right? We tend to
Yes.
lean into who we are. So every question of what could go wrong, what if, on the negative, I had to answer it. And with every answer, I realized that if you go down the list, short of killing and maiming, I'd be fine.
Yeah.
I'd be fine. I could make another change. I
Yeah.
could, but what it really helped me recognize is the stuff that fear is made of are the monsters that we think are in the closet. They're not in us really.
Mhm.
They're the imposter syndrome stuff.
Yes.
They're the things that we worry about us not being good enough.
Mhm.
And by going through the game, you kind of get to tell yourself you're good enough
Mhm.
over and over and over.
Yes.
So when you
Yes.
do that, you just kick that sucker out of the way. And
Mm.
then you're like on the other side. And then now what?
Mm. I love that. I, that's such a powerful strategy and tool for people to take away from this conversation, that when you're feeling that fear, when you're feeling, you're called to change, but these what if
What
fear
if?
moments come in, that you actually take a moment to answer them. I think that's one of the biggest missing pieces for people, is that they stay stuck in that place and don't take the
Yes.
action to answer the question,
Yes.
right?
Thank you. Thank you. It does take some insightfulness. It
Hmm.
takes some thoughtfulness and change to get through the fears that are coming at you needs to be intentional.
Yeah.
That's the point because it forces you. This is the human nature of who we are. We have built in self protectors. They're not there to block you, although that is a significant consequence of them oftentimes. But if you look at them as the why are they there in the first place, they're there to make you intentionally move forward.
Mm.
Because
Yeah.
isn't that what we should be doing in life? Is making intentional decisions. We
Yes.
could go
Yes.
with momentum. I love momentum, but I like to create momentum on my terms. When
Mm.
momentum takes you along for the ride, it feels unbalanced. It feels out of control. Who the heck wants that?
Mm.
Instead, you create momentum out of being intentional about your actions.
Mm. Yes. And I would also layer on yes to being intentional. Yes to asking the hard what if questions and answering them fully. But I also want to go back to the point you made of like, shouldn't we, what if the event turning out exactly as we want it to? I would layer that on as the next part of the exercise is actually visualizing and seeing the successful outcome of where you want to go and allowing that to be another layer to what you've already said of the positive fuel to help you get to that life that you want to have.
I love that. And, the exercise, the second part of the exercise, which accomplishes that,
Mm.
is once you sort of get those negativities like I could beat that, I could beat that, I could beat that. Great.
Mhm.
Now, the intentionality, that positive side, what if I'll never be happier?
Mm.
What if I create something that people love to come to? Which is what happened, by the way.
Yes, of course.
What if I create a lifestyle that just blows my mind every morning when I wake up at that view? But I also marvel at the fact that I get to live this life. What if that, right? So that
Mm.
begins with us asking ourselves some very pointed questions
Mm.
about really what's most important to us.
Yes. Oh, Cindy, my goodness. I think we could talk all day. I really think that we could talk all day. I'm so
I wish we could. I love
oh
it.
my goodness, I love this conversation. And I'm truly grateful for your time,
Thank you.
for you honestly shining the light into our world of uh, facing the fear and asking the questions and going through the muck in order to demonstrate to so many people that what we dream of when we're 19 is possible and any other time in our life, and to walk through the fear of change and all of these steps you've shared, to you these amazing tools you've talked about today. I hope people will get your book. I will post
Thank
a
you.
link to your book as well as all of your information, your social media, your website, all of the things below in the show notes so people can connect with you. Truly inspiring. Thank you for shining your light.
Thank you so much for having me. This was a delight.
It was so fun. So, I also want to thank our listeners for tuning in once again to Power to the People Pleasers. Please stay tuned for the next episode.